Hello there, it's Ron Davis, and I wrote my intro today, and then I just completely forgot that I'd written an intro. So, welcome to Distinctions for Life, where I help you get what you really want in life with small changes that make a big difference. I'm your host, Ron Davis. This is a very special episode, a very special DFL NaNoWriMo live stream. This year, I am doing National Novel Writing Month and sharing what I learned along the way. All of the regular DFL episodes in November are productivity tips for succeeding at NaNoWriMo. These live streams are actually about how my novel is going. If you don't know, I am writing a brand new novel called The Adventures of Space Girl Red. It is a postmodern take on pulp and pinup SF. And if you want to know more about that, you can check out my NaNoWriMo page. I will put the link so that you can find it there in the description. Sorry, messing with Windows and fancy things that you install to make your life easier, and then said fancy things don't make your life easier. All right. So what has been going on? If you haven't followed this channel, then you don't know that my life was kind of crazy at the beginning of NaNoWriMo. But here we are 12 days in, and I am halfway to 50,000 words. I achieved that today, and I'm not done writing today. I need to hit my goal, my daily goal today. I haven't met my minimum. So let's talk about how I got to 50% in 12 days. Excuse me. And what maybe you can learn from that. We'll see. So one tip is that I set my daily goal at 2K, not at 1666, which is the minimum that you need in order to to succeed. You know, that's the number. Excuse me. Maybe I shouldn't eat that Red Bull, drink that Red Bull before I go live. You know, it's the minimum you need every day to succeed, according to NaNoWriMo. That's, you know, basically 50,000 divided by 30. And let me pull up my Nano stats and maybe share that screen with you so that you can see exactly how my numbers have gone. Let's see, here they are. Now let us share our screen using StreamYard. I have gone back to using StreamYard. I had used it for live streams back at the beginning of the pandemic, and now I'm going back to it. So these are my Nano days. And what I kind of do is in my head, at least, I have like the minimum is that 1666, but 2K is what I'm really aiming for. And you can see here's the 2K line. There have been a couple of days where I have been below, maybe 3 days I've been below. But most every other day, I've been pretty close to 2K, maybe a little over 2K. Some days, quite a bit over 2K. I got 2,500 on that day and 2,500 on that day. You know, sometimes you're in the middle of it and you just want to keep going. But every day, I've done at least 1666. This is my lowest day, 1703. So having those goals is a very, very important part of success. Number two is, this may seem strange, but making it your number one priority. And it's sort of a weird way to put it, especially for me, because it's not in reality, it's not to my life. It's not my number one priority. If you followed previous ones, you know that my wife was in the hospital. She went in the hospital for surgery, emergency surgery, the day before NaNoWriMo started. And she is my number one priority. And that means I have to juggle going to the hospital and now to rehab every day to see her and get this writing done and get DFL done and get all the stuff that has to be done around the house done. Needless to say, my life is fairly busy, but I make writing a number one priority. The thing I want to get done first. I think that's part of it too. When I say number one, it's the thing I want to do first. When I wake up in the morning, it's kind of like, how quickly can I get in front of the computer? And so that is another way that helped me get to 50K so quickly. And one of the big things I learned was write when I can, not when I feel like it, not when I should, but when I can. If I have 20 minutes, like this morning, I had about 20 minutes before someone came to the house to do a thing. And I was like, I'm going to write for 20 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes is not enough to like complete this chapter, even complete this scene. But I have 20 minutes right now. I'm going to spend 20 minutes writing. And then afterwards, I can spend 20 minutes writing and so on. So just finding those times. I'm doing a whole episode called Embracing Constraints. It will come out not this week, but next week on the DFL channel on Sunday. And let's see. Yeah, so that is, so those are some of my tips for getting to 50%. Another thing that has been interesting to me because of the very nature of this book, I have weird visions. And what I mean by that is, and I got this idea when I decided to do the Space Girl books, I got the idea from something that Brandon Sanderson said in his class about how he did the Alcatraz versus Evil Librarian books. He said that was a different sort of plotting because basically what he did is he had this idea for Smedry talents and idea for Ocula for weird things that could happen in the non-Hushlands. And then every chapter he would just grab one, grab the other, smash them together, and that would be the chapter. And there was a through line. I mean, his books have a plot, but the point was that everyone had to work in these little things. And so for me, that and Space Girls, that were these tropes of sci-fi from mid-century. And by mid-century, I mean the middle of the 20th century, back when, you're talking Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and mixing in that sort of that pinup-y version of it. If you were to go to my Nano page and find the link to my Pinterest board for the Adventures of Space Girl Red, you'll find lots of sort of classic spacey pinup kind of pictures. And so I have those images in my head. And then when something is happening in my story, because of its very nature, I can just pick the weirdest, sort of kitschiest versions of that and use it. For instance, I have flying monkeys in my story. That I had this idea that I was going to have flying monkeys, and somehow, because that was just a weird thing to have in a book, especially a sci-fi book, but I do have flying monkeys, and they are expert pilots who are monkeys. I also found that when I had to create a lot of races, and those races sort of, each one sort of became not really a trope, but something. So like I have a race of plant people. I have a race of monkeys, and trying to think, I have a race of little mechanical men. So those kind of things. And so these visions are in my head. And then I get more of these visions when I go looking for specifics about different things as I'm going. Like, for instance, my Space Girl Red is part of a rainbow. And a rainbow is a group of six girls. They're put together when they're like 12. The girl to woman thing is a theme, a subplot, a cultural thing that is in the book. And I'm not even going to try and explain it here, but they're put into this group called a rainbow, and each of them has a color, and hers is red. And I was looking for images of engineering women because that's one of the purposes that a space girl might have. And I found some images of, I said, engineer space girl. And I got images, and interestingly enough, all of these images that I saw that I thought that really looks like her, the woman was black. And so that turned Space Girl Yellow, who's not a major character, she's a minor character, into someone of African descent with sort of a vibe of that. I think that's kind of why they were yellow, that the images that different people had created were based on African themes. And so they had more African colors from different countries in Africa, and one of them was yellow, and so that was what it is. She ends up then being a character that's kind of like the Black Panther's sister, Siri. So that was just, a vision that came, that she was yellow, and then that led to another thing, and then that led to another aspect of her, and so it all sort of built on one another. And that gave me more to go on as I was going because I had these visions. I have had a vision early on that there was going to be a dance contest. And, this isn't particularly original even today for sci-fi things because, hey, Guardians of the Galaxy ended in a dance-off. My dance-off is considerably different. But I decided there was going to be a dance-off. And as I was writing that, I would watch videos on YouTube of dance contests and different choreography groups and breakdance contests, and all of those things were inspirations. And even when I'd be trying to describe dance, which let me tell you, that's not an easy thing to do as a novelist. And it's also kind of weird because in a sense, you're not trying to describe what the dance is or what the dance even looks like. You're trying to convey the feeling of the dance to the reader. And you're actually a little better off you certainly don't want to go technical. You don't want to go dance jargon, but you're actually better off not describing in detail the dance itself because it allows your reader to imagine what a militaristic feel to the dance would be, or what flowing means, as opposed to saying, trying to go, they pirouetted slowly 316 degrees, like that's not going to really give you the same feeling as saying that she flowed like the wind, those are two different things. But one last vision I wanted to talk about was there's this sort of classic pinup image that you see all over the place of some space girl riding a rocket, like a horse. And I was like, man, I got to figure out how to put I have to figure out how to get Red onto a rocket and have her ride in a rocket, which doesn't make any sense really from a whole slew of perspectives. But I figured out how to do it, and that's coming up. All right. So another way that I got to 50K is that I kept my rewards. So I ordered my print that is the cover image of Space Girl Red, which hopefully you guys have seen before. If you haven't, on my NaNoWriMo page, people, like, everything's on the NaNoWriMo page. Let's see. Let me bring back the NaNoWriMo. This is my NaNoWriMo page. This is one of the inspiration images, but this is the cover. Let's see. So that image, I have had a 11 by 14 printed of that. That was my 10K reward, was to have a print made of that image, because I didn't have any. So then I can put it on a shelf. There's a shelf right here with a picture on it. I'm going to hang it on that, so it'll be in front of me all the time when I'm writing. When I crossed 20K, I ordered a Time Flip 2, which is this device that lets you track time by physically turning it. Like, it looks like this is the 12-sided die. It looks like a 12-sided die. And then whichever side is up, that is getting tracked. So I ordered one of those, although it turns out that it's coming from Singapore, and that means it's going to take a long time. So I won't see that for a while. And I haven't reached 30K yet. 30K is the new Borderlands 3 season pass. And then for hitting my final goal is to buy an Xbox Series X, which may be another one of those where I'm like, you could buy it, but you can't have it for any time soon, because apparently they're sold out right now. Of course, they only did come out yesterday. All right, so keeping your rewards is important. This is important for a number of reasons. One of the big reasons is that if you tell yourself you're going to have a reward, and then you don't give yourself that reward, the next time you tell yourself you'll have a reward if you succeed at something, your brain won't believe you. So you've got to give the rewards that you promise yourself. All right. You know what? See, I have my camera. I actually can't see my face because I put the camera right in front of the image I'm looking at. And then whatever. All right. Another interesting thing that has come up for me in the book is that there are some things that have made me uncomfortable when I'm writing it. For instance, and I didn't even realize I had done this, but all of the black guys all of the bad guys are black. And I don't mean black like African American. I mean, or people of African descent. I mean, matte black, coal black with white hair that are they're actually kind of probably loosely inspired by the Drow, if you're a D&D person, which were these black-skinned evil elves. And that's kind of how I think of the Xerxens looking like. And some of my characters are that. But I do quite a bit to point out that the black is not, it's not modern how we would say the word black when describing a person. And then I'm talking about African American and African American. See, it's weird because we have all of these cultural things that are going on in our world, and all of these thoughts in your head, and all this what's right and what's wrong. But there are no Americans in Space Girl Red. There are no Earthlings. There's no Earth. It's not part of the story. This is all somewhere else. Out in the universe, and none of anything is relevant there. And so, anyway, it's still, I hadn't noticed it till I pointed out that my Xerxens were black. That it's like, is that a problem? So my wife told me, is that a problem? I'm like, well, I hope not. I hadn't really thought about it until just this very second that might be an issue, but I don't think it will be. Okay. I was a little worried I was a little worried about the flying monkeys too, that someone might think I was making a reference there, especially since I've heard that about the Wizard of Oz. And, but I did notice this in the Wizard of Oz, that the monkeys are blue. I had not realized that until I started pulling out images of the flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz, and they're blue. They look really weird as a matter of fact, but my flying monkeys are blue too. And they are total badasses in the book. And I'm a little uncomfortable about how my dance contest wins and how it ends and how she wins. Maybe a little more sexual than I intended to, but you know what? That's what happened in the contest. And that's one of those weird writer things, right? You're writing your story, and your characters are doing things, and then she needs to have a dance move that person can't do, and then the person does a move, and she does a move which makes sense off the other move, and then you're like, oh wow, Ron, that may be a little graphic for some people, but you know what? It's the first draft, and it's not my job at this point to edit. So I just wrote that out, and she totally wins. He's totally humiliated, and it pushes everything into the next level of trouble for Red. A couple of writer hacks, and then I'm going to close this up. It's not going to be as long of my crazy rambling as I normally am. And here's something I learned doing these live streams versus doing my shows on Sunday. My shows on Sunday are 5 to 7 minutes long, sometimes even shorter than that. And they probably convey just as much or more information than I convey in these things. I just don't ramble all over the place because I wrote them, rewrote them, scripted them, and I read them. But whereas here I have an outline, I just ramble about everything forever. Writer hacks. Let's go. Okay, so don't end at a good stopping point. This was something I picked up off of Reddit that has been very useful. So it's really easy. You're writing a scene, especially you write a scene, you get to the end of the scene, you hit your word count, and you're like, I'm done. And you walk and you just stop because it's a good stopping point, right? You even think that I need to stop at a good stopping point, but that's a mistake. What you need to do is you hit that good stopping place, and then write the beginning of the next thing. I will often write, just the first paragraph of the next section, because then when you come back to it the next day, the story's already begun and it's hanging there, right? Like you read that paragraph and you're like, oh yeah, I know where I need to be now. And you're just writing. Whereas if you were at a stopping point and you come back, well, now you're faced with a blank page and you have to think, okay, what do I write? How do they get from A to B? And what needs to be next? And what happens next? And so you have all those thought process. But if you hang yourself in the middle of the next scene, then you know exactly what to do. And there's no thought process that goes in at the starting point of your writing session. And so that was a big hack that has been really done well for me, is to not end at a good stopping point. Always end in the middle of a scene, or at least in the beginning of a scene, so that when you come back to it, you already have something going. Another thing that I learned is that I did a point of view change in order to tell something. Okay, so like, the cardinal rule is show, don't tell. And there was a point where I was writing the history of my bad guys, the Xerxens. And I was writing it, and one of the things, you're writing and you kind of have a voice. And I realized I was writing this in my research section of Scrivener. And it was kind of like someone was telling this story. And my characters, including Red, need to know the history of these people. Come on. Okay. My character, especially Red, needs to know the history of the God King Bruno, and somebody needs to tell it to her. And I have written this thing, and it's pretty much written as if someone was telling her. And then I'm like, okay, I will have one of their ambassadors explain this. And like, this will be him explaining the history of the God Emperor, the God King. Which, by the way, I think in the middle of telling this story, he went from being a king to a God King. And what I did, though, at first I was like, okay, I'm going to start off with, like Red talking to him in a pub, and then she's going to say, well, here's the history. And then he's quote, and then we're going to go through the whole thing of him talking for, a page or so about this. And then at the end, she'll come back and say some things. Or in the middle, I'll have to figure out how to push her into the middle of the story where she's asking questions and stuff. And then I realized, what I could do is set up a scene where he's going to tell the story and then just break and have this section be its own standalone section from a different point of view, as if someone were telling. And that's what I ended up doing. I don't know if that's going to work long term, but it was an interesting way to take all this stuff I was having to write for world building and get it into my word count. And I think it makes really good sense. It let me write sort of an interesting actiony scene for her to get to the point where he tells the story. And then he's laying down history points that immediately matter in the next scene, that are actually sort of foundationally pivotal for the conflict that she gets herself into in the next thing, by underestimating just how powerful the villain is. So anyway, that's my story of hitting 50% for Space Girl Red. If you want to know more about Red and about my progress, I would encourage you. Let's see if I can do that. I would encourage you to follow me on NaNoWriMo, which you can do using the link that's scrolling along the bottom of the screen right now. And that's it. Thanks for watching. If you are not a subscriber to Distinctions for Life, subscribe. I put out new videos every Sunday at 5 p.m. with little changes that make a big difference. They are sort of in the personal development category, although there's some philosophy and productivity, lots of productivity and stuff like that. And then weird stuff like, let's talk about writing and embracing constraints. Well, there are two things that make this month's relevant. One is writing a novel is a lot like a lot of other things that you may need to do in life. And the tips for productivity tips for succeeding that are relevant in other things. And so that's one of the things. And the other is doing this process has taught me things that are relevant outside of just novel writing. And that's what the distinctions for this month are about. And I shouldn't start every sentence with the end. So thank you for watching this long. If you've come back to this later, and if you are interested in getting more information about Distinctions for Life or seeing these update videos, which are coming out on Thursdays at 2 for the month of November, then you need to subscribe. You can also go back and check out all the great older videos on Distinctions for Life. And until next time, I'm Ron Davis.